Brian from behind the chair. Yeah, I'm dressed in my Sunday best. That would be because I've been to church. Yeah, I do it every week if I can. I thought today I'd take a second and talk about a miracle. Because sometimes people think they don't happen. Well, this was probably 21 years ago. But I'm going to tell it to you so you know that the God of the universe, He does answer and hear prayers. About 21 years ago, a lady I call Miss Peterson, that would be my grandmother, she passed. And it was one marvelous homegoing. Actually, I'd never been to one before that. It's also the first homegoing or funeral that I ever spoke at. I was very close to Miss Peterson. Why did I call her Miss Peterson? Because she was such a lady. When I was begging, I would call her Nana. And she used to call me Master Van Loon. She left lots of pearls of wisdom with me. And I remember on that particular day, as I was riding to the church, my mom, my wife, my kids were in the car. And we were in a place called Cinnaminson, New Jersey on Route 130. And you can see the sky line of the city of Philadelphia. And it was raining. And I remember saying to my mom, Mom, I'm going to ask God to hold back the rain until I get Miss Peterson in the ground. And when I did, I looked over and there was a rainbow over top of the city of Philadelphia. And in my heart and in my spirit, I believed that God had heard my prayer and said yes. That was my thought. Well, as we proceeded to get to West Philadelphia, we went to a church that was my grandmother's and my mom's church called Tyree. It's an AME church located at 38th and Hamilton Street. Well, when I got to this church, I'd say, well, let's guess the time was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. So I'm going to say it was Wednesday. Not absolutely positive that it was Wednesday, but that's the day I'm going to say it was. And I remember being a little concerned about that because I didn't like the fact that they were holding my grandmother's funeral on a weekday. I thought about all the people that probably wouldn't come. Well, I was sitting down front, very close to the casket. It was white. I think it must have been about 10 minutes to 1, and I looked back, and there were people in the church, but not that many. And I remember feeling very, very discouraged that day. I hung my head, and I thought to myself, Miss Peterson deserves better than this. A bigger crowd. I thought more people would come out. I know it's a work day. So I looked again, and I guess it must have been about 5 minutes to 1. And when I looked back, lo and behold, they were starting to put chairs in the aisle of the church. And there were people lined up against the back of the church. Well, the old girl had pulled a crowd that made the fire marshal nervous. I was pleased and impressed. And when it was my turn to speak, I spoke about Miss Peterson and all her accomplishments and how she was what the Bible called a cheerful giver. And that was a marvelous thing to listen to some of the other ministers, one of them telling a story about how he wanted to recover all the seats in the church, and that would run about $10,000 or so. He thought perhaps not getting splinters in your behind was worth it. He said, and the congregation didn't give him a thumbs up on that situation. He said he got angry and said, never mind, I'll do it myself. So he said after that meeting, Miss Peterson met him in the hallway, and he said to her, she said to him, if you keep it between me, you, and God, I'll give you half. So that day he said, so the first cushions or whatever in this church were purchased by Miss Peterson and myself. And he said, now you know why it was you weren't getting splinters in your behind. And he spoke of her kindness and her generosity. She did things in secret because the only person needed to know was God. So there were a lot of things to learn from her because she was a cool old lady. She had a lot of neat things to say. But I was happy. And when I spoke of her, I spoke of many fun things. I talked about the time Well, when she passed, I owed her about $300. She helped me along my way. She did things for my business as I was struggling to get open. She did kick in, and I did open that salon, and I gave her a lot of praise for being helpful and giving me the encouragement that I needed. But at the end of the service, people were happy and they smiled, and it was a good experience under the circumstances. I had never seen anything like it. So a homegoing is when you ain't going to hell. She had that Jesus thing down pat, and I remember saying, the last thing, in all you're getting, get yourself some Jesus. Well, I was a pallbearer, and I was on the front. I was on the front of the coffin. I'm having a rough time with this tongue today, as you can see. But whichever the case, we started up that ramp, and they popped open the doors. And when they popped open the doors, I looked up, and it was raining. My heart dropped. And for the first time in that whole funeral service, I began to cry. Tears rolled down my face because I thought surely that the God of the universe had heard my prayer and was going to make it to be so. Well, I tried to pull myself together because I was so disappointed that it was unbelievable. What I did was continue down the steps. And when my foot hit the sidewalk, bam, the rain stopped like somebody turned the faucet off. I got goosebumps, and I've been again to just want to dance, but I was holding the coffin. So I smiled a big smile and thought to myself, he actually did hear me. I just simply asked him to hold back the rain until I got Miss Peterson in the ground. Well, turns out that we rode out to the cemetery, and though it was wet and muddy, still a great deal of people followed us. I remember looking back and seeing lights as far back as 2-3 city blocks. This was on a Wednesday, and the old girl, she pulled a crowd. We got to the cemetery, and the family put flowers on the coffin, and everyone started to lean backwards and head towards their car. They hit the button, zzz, and a little gurney that she was on started lowering down into the ground. And I stood and watched. And then, when the green straps pop, stopped, the rain began to pour in giant drops, sound like hail hitting the cars, and everybody scurried for their cars trying to get out of the rain because it was the kind of rain where you would get wet in 5 or 6 seconds. You'd be soaked. But I did not run to the car. I began to dance like David danced, holding my hands up, giving the God of the universe praise and honor and thanksgiving. I danced in circles, and the rain was soaking me wet, and the mud was starting to splat, and I didn't care because the God of the universe heard my prayer, me, a serious sinner who knows the truth. So I'll never forget looking back at the limo and seeing my mom put her hand to the glass because she knew exactly what it was that I asked the God of the universe to do for me, to honor one of his saints. Well, my point being, God can if you ask him to. The question is, will you ask him? So, as Miss Peterson would say, in all you're getting, get yourself some Jesus. And you too will find that there's a mansion not made by hands waiting for you. So it's Sunday, and this is Brian from Behind the Chair. Every now and then I'll come to you with a marvelous story about the God of the universe and the power of Jesus Christ. So this is not my regular forte, but I came from church and I'm thinking about the goodness of Jesus to a sinner like me. So perhaps this story will help you to know that the God of the universe cares about what we care about. Now, you take care of yourself. Be good to somebody. Tell somebody you love them. because you might not get another chance.